The fluorescent lights in room 214 buzzed like angry hornets as Derek slammed the lab door behind him. "You think you belong here, teaching real kids?" he snarled, storming toward the black woman in the white lab coat. Before she could answer, his hand shot out and clamped around her throat. The class froze. Beakers clattered. Someone screamed. Elena Carter didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. Her dark eyes, steady as deep water, locked onto his. In that split second, 20 years of training whispered through her muscles: breathe, assess, choose. But she chose something the army had never drilled into her, something harder. Kindness. Elena had arrived in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, 3 years earlier with quiet purpose. After 2 tours as a combat medic in Afghanistan and a classified stint with a rapid response medical team, she had traded desert sand for high school chalk dust. Students called her Miss E. They loved her because she stayed after school to help with college essays, bought prom dresses for girls who couldn't afford them, and once drove a scared sophomore to the hospital at 2 a.m. when his appendix burst. She never talked about her medals. She talked about second chances. Derek Knowles had none of those stories. At 22, he was already bitter and adrift, laid off from the mill, radicalized by online echo chambers, and convinced every problem in his life wore a different skin color. When he heard the new science teacher was black and pushing diversity projects, something in him snapped. He'd come to send a message. His fingers tightened. "You people always..." "Derek," Elena said, voice calm despite the pressure on her windpipe, "I know your mother." The words hit harder than any strike. His grip loosened a fraction. "What?" "Sarah Knowles. Breast cancer, 2018. I was still active duty, on leave. Volunteered at the VA clinic in Pittsburgh. I sat with her during chemo when you couldn't make it." Elena's voice remained gentle, almost conversational. "She told me about the little boy who used to bring her dandelions. Said you had the kindest heart she'd ever seen." For one heartbeat, Derek's face flickered with something human. Then rage flooded back. "Shut up." He shoved her against the lab table. Glassware shattered. Students backed against the walls, phones recording with shaking hands. But Elena's hands were already moving, not to fight, but to steady. With the same precision that once stopped arterial bleeding under fire, she slipped 2 fingers under his thumb, breaking the choke with almost no force. She didn't throw him. She simply stepped aside as momentum carried him forward. He stumbled into a stool and crashed to the floor. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 10 seconds. Security burst in. Students shouted. Derek scrambled up, wild-eyed, expecting handcuffs, expecting her to gloat. Instead, Elena raised both palms toward the guards. "Wait," she said. "Please. Let me talk to him." They sat in the empty lab after the students were sent home. Police waited outside the door at Elena's quiet insistence. Derek hunched in a chair, knuckles white, expecting the worst. She slid a bottle of water across the table to him. "I'm not pressing charges," she said. He laughed bitterly. "Bullshit. You ruined my life." "I could have ended your life in the first 2 seconds," she replied evenly. "I've done harder things with worse people. But I didn't join the military to kill angry boys who miss their mothers. I joined to protect them." Derek stared at the floor. "Why are you doing this?" Elena leaned forward. The bruise on her throat was already darkening, yet her expression held no anger, only a deep, weary compassion. "Because someone once showed me grace when I didn't deserve it. I grew up in foster care in Detroit. Angry. Fighting everyone. One teacher, a white man named Mr. Delgado, caught me stealing from his desk. Instead of calling the cops, he asked why I was hungry. Then he fed me. Every day for 2 years. Changed my whole life. That's the debt I pay forward. She told him about the desert nights when wounded soldiers, black, white, brown, bled the same color. About the Afghan girl she'd carried 3 kilometers after a raid, only to lose her anyway. About learning that hatred was the real enemy, and it wore every face. Derek's shoulders began to shake. The tough guy mask cracked. I lost my job, my girl. Moss gone. Everything's falling apart and I needed someone to blame. I know, Elena said softly. But blame is a crutch, Derek. It keeps you crippled. You've got choices. Real ones. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small, worn photo. It showed a young soldier, Elena, 20 years younger, smiling beside a little white boy holding dandelions. Sarah Knowles stood behind them, weak but beaming. Your mom gave me this the last time I saw her, Elena said. She made me promise to give it to you one day. Said you need to remember who you really are. Derek took the photo with trembling hands. Tears cut clean lines through the dust on his face. For the first time in years, he cried like the boy who once brought flowers to his mother. The story exploded online. Phones had captured the choke, the takedown, and, most shockingly, the conversation afterward. Clips of Elena's calm mercy went viral. News vans descended on Millbrook High. Offers poured in, interviews, book deals, even a teaching award from the state. Elena turned most of them down. She kept teaching. But Derek changed. He started showing up at the school, not as an intruder, but as a volunteer. He mopped floors, helped set up labs, and eventually enrolled in community college for welding. Every month he brought Elena a single dandelion in a paper cup. They talked about his mother, about anger management, about the long road to becoming the man Sarah had believed he could be. One spring afternoon, 2 years later, Derek stood beside Elena at the school's science fair. Her students, every color, every background, presented projects on clean water, renewable energy, and medical tech. A nervous black girl from the projects won first place with a low-cost prosthetic design. Derek watched Elena hug the girl, eyes shining with pride. Later, as the gym emptied, Derek approached his former teacher. The bruise he'd left on her throat had long faded, but the memory never would. I still can't believe you didn't destroy me that day, he said. Elena smiled, the same steady, warm smile that had disarmed him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, the same shoulder that had once driven forward in rage. You're proof, Derek. People can change. Hatred doesn't get the last word. Love does, if we're brave enough to choose it. Years later, at Elena's retirement ceremony, Derek, now a married father of 2 and a respected trades instructor, stood to speak. He held up the faded photo of the dandelions. I once tried to choke the best thing that ever happened to me, he said, voice thick. She could have ended me with skills I'll never understand. Instead, she chose mercy. She chose to see the scared kid behind the bully. Miss E didn't just teach science. She taught me what it means to be human. The auditorium rose in a standing ovation. Elena sat quietly, tears in her eyes, wearing the same simple lab coat she'd worn that fateful day. No medals. No spotlight seeking. Just a woman who had stared hatred in the face and answered with the most powerful weapon she possessed. compassion. And in that choice, both a bully and a teacher found redemption, reminding everyone watching that the strongest among us are not those who break necks, but those brave enough to open hearts.